everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the Detroit Lions' future, as you guys can see from the board, specifically the head coaching position. So let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know DoseOfDion. He put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome in, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, it is now Monday, okay? So I'm a little bit more calm after our loss yesterday to the New Orleans Saints. Yes, that was a very, very tough loss. Also, before we get this video started, man, look at that jersey. That DeAndre Levy jersey is looking clean in the background. Let me just say that. Also, we will be doing film breakdowns of Matthew Stafford, the Lions defense, Lions offense. We're going to dive into a lot of things, and we'll also use it for the Jacksonville game. However, the All-22 film is not out yet because I guess it's too close to the game still. So it's not out yet, but you know, when it does come out, we'll break that all down. But in today's video, I want to discuss the Lions' future at the head coach position. Now, most of you guys watching this video, you guys know how I feel about Matt Patricia, right? You know about my thoughts about the front office. But ultimately, we have all the same ideas. I mean, ultimately, we do. We all have the same thoughts. And those thoughts are that we want the Lions to win games. Now, we may have different ideas on how the Lions can get there, on what the Lions should do to get there, but ultimately, we all have the same thing. We just want to win football games. I don't care who's coaching, okay? It can be Clifford. I don't care who's coaching. We just want to win football games, right? So we all ultimately have the same goal. Everybody just have different ideas of how to get there. It's cool, right? It's all cool, but it's cool because we all do ultimately have the same goal. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing the potential future, okay? Now, me and T were talking about this yesterday, and, you know, we kind of thought this would be a video that's necessary to do. And we're not going to dive into any specific coaching candidates. That's not what this video is. This video isn't top 10 coaching candidates. That's not what this is. All right, we're talking about the coaching position and the future of it, okay? Now, obviously, Bob Quinn could be involved. Bob Quinn, you know, could be part of this, but we're just specifically talking about the head coach position in today's video. Okay, so Matt Patricia at 1-3 right now is not in a very good position. Why is he not in a good position? Well, because the Detroit Lions heading into this year, whether you agree with it, whether I agree with it, whether, you know, Bobby agrees with it, I don't know who Bobby is, but Clifford, whoever, whether they agree with this, the Lions were giving a set of standards, I guess you would say, or expectations that they had to reach for this season. And it came in an open letter to the fans, and it was pretty darn simple. I mean, they stated it. I quote, "Lions to be a playoff contender in 2020. All right, that was a quote from their little letter to the fans that they gave the Lions this offseason, okay? So that's what we all saw. All those fans see that, and we're saying, okay, this is the expectations they put out. All right, for whatever reason, these are the expectations they put out for the Detroit Lions, for Matt Patricia. If he wants to remain here, we're specifically, again, just talking about Matt Patricia. If he wants to remain here and he wants to be part of this Lions' future, you must be a playoff contender in 2020. That is their expectations. Now, with 7 teams getting into the playoffs, I mean, you could look at playoff contender however you want to. Me, personally, I look at playoff contender and see this. There's 7 teams that can get in. If you finish as maybe the 8th seed and, you know, it comes down to the very final week and you didn't get in, potentially they could maybe consider keeping you. But if it's week 13 and you can't get in, or you're like 5% chance and then you don't get in, it's week 15, you're eliminated, that's not a playoff contender to me. Playoff contender means by the end of the year, at the last week of the season, you are in contention to get into a playoff spot. All right? Last week of the season, you have to have an opportunity to get into a playoff spot. That to me is what playoff contender means. And honestly, I kind of wish they would have clarified that, but of course, they don't have to. But it's pretty darn simple. I mean, they made it pretty simple that, hey, you have to reach these or you won't be here, right? You have to reach these expectations, or pretty much you're not going to be here. So that's what we get as a fan base. We understand that. Matt Patricia and the Lions are up to a 1-3 start. They're heading into a bye week. 1-3 start, not a very good start, right? Your chances to make the playoffs at 1-3 are not very good. So you're looking at this just saying, okay, well, this is not good for Matt Patricia. Now, of course, like I said earlier, all of us fans ultimately have the same goal. We want them to win football games. And again, you guys know how I feel about Matt Patricia. You know I'm a very optimistic person, and I'm hoping the Lions can make this work coming out of the bye week. And we will continue to focus on this team until, you know, we don't know who, until we, you know, go look for another head coach or whatever. But we also know that with the position the Lions are in at 1-3, they have to do something that historically they haven't really done, and they haven't done it with Matt Patricia at all. Now, the circumstances maybe haven't been the best to do it, but still, winning multiple games in a row is just not something that we've seen with Matt Patricia. And you're going to have to do that when you start 1-3. To get back into a playoff contender spot, to get back into the playoff race like a legitimate playoff contender, you have to win multiple games in a row. You just have to. You can't go every other. It's just not going to happen. You can't lose 2-3 straight games. It's just not going to happen. You won't get in. And when you look at our next 7 games, honestly, if you go by the records right now, there's an opportunity for Matt Patricia to make this thing come together and to get on a run here. And we're going to need to see it. Because if you look at the next 7 games, they have a combined record of 8-19 pending tonight's game for the Falcons. If they lose tonight, it'll be an 8-20 combined record. And obviously, we're only 4 games in for all these teams, but still, 1-3 Jags, 0-3 Falcons, 3-1 Colts, 1-3 Vikings, 1-3 Washington, 2-2 Panthers, 0-4 Texans. And obviously, again, still early, so 1-3 team could be better than the 1-3 record looks. But it's still potentially set up for the Lions to make a little bit of a run. And the last time the Lions did make the playoffs, if you want any kind of hope, the last time the Lions did make the playoffs, 2016, Lions started 1-3, won their next 3 games in a row, lost, then won 5 in a row. They got to 9-4. They won 8 of their next 9 games. Now, they lost their last 3 because Stafford was dealing with a little injury. Maybe that was part of it. Either way, they did get into the playoffs. They got into the playoffs, and they won 8 of their next 9 games. That's how you turn it around. We may not need to get 8 of our next 9. You'll probably need 8 of your next 10, maybe 11, to get back into a playoff contender position with 7 teams getting in. Because the NFC is no joke, right? We get that. Okay, so we're going to have to, catch some fire. So what if it doesn't happen, right? What if this doesn't work out? Well, of course, if it doesn't happen and the Lions are announced that, hey, we're going to go look for a new head coach, we're going to dive into tons of coaching candidates. But what kind of candidate would be the best for this organization? And like I said, you guys know I want this to work more than anybody, all right? Well, I know we all want it to work, but you guys know I really want it to work, and I believe it can work, and I believe they can turn this around. But we still also have to not deny the reality that it may not. There's always that other side that you have to pay attention to because it could come up. So if it does come up, the Lions fall flat for whatever reason, and they're eliminated, and it's like, okay, you're not going to reach your expectations, and we're going to look for a new head coach. Because you already put those out there. The Lions have to be accountable because you put it out there. You can't deny it now. You already put it out there. He has to reach that, or you can't bring him back, right? You've already told us that, okay? Because then you're lying to everybody. We don't know who to trust. You already told us that. You have to give him the opportunity. If he doesn't live up to it, then he's gone. So what if it doesn't work out? Who do the Lions look for as the next head coaching candidate? Now, again, we're not looking at specific names here, really, but I've seen a lot of names. I've seen Saleh. I've seen the Chiefs guy. I've seen tons of different names. Everybody got Rex Ryan. Everybody's got their own name, and that's cool. Everybody can. And again, this is just kind of a theory type of deal on what the Lions may want to look to do if it does come to this scenario to have the best future for their team. All right, so let's take a look here. What I wanted to do is take a look, obviously in the Super Bowl era, of the Detroit Lions coaches and see which coaches were the most successful and write them down. So I took the 5 most successful coaches by record: Joe Schmidt, Wayne Fontes, Bobby Ross, Jim Caldwell, and Monty Clark. All right, those are the 5 coaches. So I wrote the 5 coaches down and said, boom, here we go. Here's the 5 most successful coaches, and obviously not super successful, but they're the most successful in our history. And I wanted to see, where did they come from? Because we're looking at coordinators, offense coordinators, defense coordinators, assistant coach, offensive line coach. We're looking at all these different names, college coach, whatever it may be. Where did these guys come from, right? Is there any kind of pattern to the guys that actually had success in Detroit? And I think there actually is a pattern here. And the reason I think there's a pattern here is something that we'll get into in a second when we start to dive into these names. But I think there's a reason there's a pattern here. So we're going to kind of jump into that theory. Shout out to T for having this idea, because T told me last night, he said this: I want to hire a guy that's had head coaching experience. I want to hire a guy that's been there, done that, probably been successful, has that on the resume that I've done it before. Because the thing that you always have to be cautious with when you hire a coordinator is they've never been a head coach before. Doesn't mean they can't. I want to make this clear. I'm not saying don't hire coordinators. You can, and they've worked. Some of the best coaches in our NFL right now were never head coaches before. But there is always that little concern that, they've never coached a team before. It's much different than focusing on one thing. So you can be a brainiac at what you do, but if you're trying to be in charge of a whole team, it's a completely different job. It's nowhere near being a coordinator, right? It's a completely different job. You're focused on everything. It's more management than, I would say scheme or anything like that. It's more managing your team, finding the right hires, right? Making the right hires, bringing the right guys. It's all management. As a coordinator, you're just focused on, okay, here's our guys. Here's the guys you gave me. Now I'm going to build it, and I'm going to make this work. We're going to stop teams. We're going to do this, or we're going to score the ball. We're going to design plays. When you're the head coach, you're just kind of in charge of everything, right? You're overseeing your coordinators, your players, everything like that. So it's different. You're running practices. It's different. Patricia's had to learn that. He's probably still learning it a little bit. So there always is that little concern. But again, it doesn't mean it doesn't work. But I think one reason, this is just a theory, one reason that the Lions historically have had more success with guys that have had coaching experience in the past is because we don't have a culture. Now, how do you build a culture, right? There's ways to go about that. But I think that's something that we have to look at here. Because if you look at some of the most successful teams, all right, you look at Bill Belichick, he was a head coach first with Cleveland. He left Cleveland. When New England, they turned that thing around. I mean, they're just, the history is what it is. We know what they did. And then if you look at some other teams in the NFL and you say, well, hold up, this guy was a coordinator. He was never a head coach. He made it work, like maybe Mike Tomlin, those names. Right? There's a lot of names out there. You say, well, this guy was never a head coach, but he made it work. So what are you talking about? Well, I think the difference is, let's take the Steelers, for example. All right, the Steelers go out and they can bring in a coordinator, Mike Tomlin. Okay, they can do that. And for the he was a defense coordinator. So or a defensive line coach, whatever. You can go bring in a specific person that has that specific job. But I think the difference is between the Steelers and the Lions is historically they have a culture. They have basically a system there. When you think about Pittsburgh, it has not changed, okay? You think a certain way about Pittsburgh. You know what they're about. You know what their history is about. And it kind of is like, okay, it's like a more welcoming experience where it's like, okay, I see what's going on here. I know what Pittsburgh's all about. Now I'm coming into it. Now I'm about Pittsburgh life, all of that. And obviously, if you're already there before, that helps. So, I think it always helps to be somewhere first. Maybe you can see the firsthand experiences, right? With those teams that have already built something, that have already done it historically, like the Packers or, those kind of teams, they're like, okay, this is the Packers' way of doing things. Like, I get it. This can be a way easier transition. For the Lions, we don't have that. For whatever reason, we have one playoff win. We don't have that. You don't come to Detroit and you're like, okay, this is the Lions' way. When you think of the Lions historically, what do you think of? Aside from not winning football games, you don't think of a certain play style, a certain system, a culture that Detroit has here. There's really nothing here, right? There's no thought. And I think that's why maybe head coaches have had more success. The Lions haven't had that culture or consistent success where it's like, okay, I'm coming in, I'm feeling good, I'm taking over. No, you're usually taking over. If you're taking over the Lions job, you're taking over a dumpster fire, and you're taking over with no experience, and there's no culture here. So you have all these things already working against you. It's not a very good environment to come to when you've never been a coach. And if you start out slow, because of our history of always starting out slow, the pressure is extremely immense on you, because it's not like, oh yeah, we're okay with lose 3 years in a row because guess what? We've been good before. No, you come to Detroit and you're trash 2 years, like, oh, get this dude out of here. So let's run through these 5 coaches real quick. And let me show you what, things that these guys all have in common. We're going to start off with Joe Schmidt, who had a 43-34 record. This is a little bit older, but it is Super Bowl era. And the interesting thing with Joe Schmidt is that he was actually so involved in this organization. He actually was a player for the Lions first. Then, as he retired, the Lions hired him as their assistant coach. The Lions were, you know what? We like this guy. This guy's a monster. We're going to hire you as an assistant coach. Then, this Lions team that was doing not so great fired their head coach. And he steps in as the interim head coach. He steps in, and now he is the head coach of the Detroit Lions, right? He steps in, now he is hired as the Lions head coach. So this guy that was just a player that's been in the organization for years, played for them, then he got to sit and watch and see how everything is going on as the assistant, kind of learn everything. Then he takes over the job. He's 43-34, one of the best records any Lions coach has ever had. And he took over a team that was what Detroit Free Press would call at the bottom, at the depth of the lowest of the lows. All right, he took over a team that was horrendous, and it was rebuild right away. It was 2 years of rebuild. It was 2 years, not so very good years. His second year, he was actually booed during one game because they didn't agree with him running out the clock instead of going for the win. All right. Then in that third year, they picked it up. He had a really good draft, very good offseason. They go 10-4, and they start to turn things around. It's like, okay, and then it continued, right? They were able to build something there. So it started to work with Joe Schmidt, 43-34. And as you can see, he was a guy that wasn't a head coach before, but he played for them. He was within the organization, within the system. Then he was an assistant coach. He got to see everything first. Then he became the head coach, and he had probably more knowledge than anybody else on that team of what the problem was, being like first-hand experience from being a coach and a player of what the problems actually were and where they need to fix it. And I think that's why their offseasons were so good. Next up, Wayne Fontes, 66-67, arguably the best coach that we've ever had in the Super Bowl era. Wayne Fontes filled in as our interim head coach. So again, another guy, he's hired as a defense coordinator with Detroit. He's in the organization, right? He's seeing what's going on. He's part of it. He sees it for years. Then all of a sudden, the Detroit Lions fire their head coach. And they're like, you know what, Wayne Fontes, you take over. Wayne Fontes took over. It wasn't a great start. Technically, his first 3 years were not very good. Okay, first year was only 5 games. Next 2 years were not playoff years. All right. And then that fourth year, all of a sudden, 12-4, they win a playoff game. It's like, whoa, this is like the best season we've ever had in the Super Bowl era. It was. He stepped in as the Detroit Lions head coach. Another guy that was part of the organization, wasn't a head coach before, doesn't have the experience, but he was part of it. He was around it. And all of a sudden, he probably could maybe learn, okay, here's what's going wrong here. Maybe I kind of see what the vision is and where we need to change things. So when he opted in, he was able to rebuild it. Because obviously, if you fire a head coach, something's not going good there. It's a problem. The team's not good. So he steps up, and he's like, okay, I've been here for years. I know what the problem is. And he turned it around in a couple years. All of a sudden, they get consistent. They had a 5-11 year, but they get consistent, and all of a sudden, they're a consistent playoff team. Let's continue to go. Bobby Ross. I guess there was some controversy with Bobby Ross in the year, but 27-30, still a solid record for a Lions head coach. Ross was a little bit different. He wasn't like the first two. But what Bobby Ross was, is he had experience as a head coach. This was a guy that was a head coach in college that went with a team to a national championship. Then in the NFL, he was a head coach for the Charger that had some success. So on his resume, you knew that, okay, he's proven at the college level and the NFL level, and he has experience as a head coach. All right, he's ran a team before. He came to Detroit, maybe not the most loved guy, but 27-30 is still not bad when it comes to our winning percentages. And all of a sudden, we're somewhat successful. We're a mediocre team, but that's successful for the Lions. So he's had that experience before. So a guy like that. Continue. Jim Caldwell, 36-28. Probably, I think it's our highest winning percentage of any. It's one of our highest winning percentages of any coach. So Jim Caldwell, we know he had a very good tenure here when it comes to record. All right. Now I'm not saying bring Caldwell back. That's not what this is. But Jim Caldwell with Indianapolis, right? Working with Indianapolis, he's a quarterback's coach. All of a sudden, their head coach retires. So it's not like this team was a dumpster fire where he's turning it around. No, their head coach retired. They were great. They had Peyton Manning. They were on top of the world. He steps over, takes over as coach. They win their first 14 games. They finished that year 14-2 because they sat their starters for the last two. So they go 14-2. All right. Indianapolis 14-2. They go to the Super Bowl. They lose the Super Bowl. They go to the Super Bowl his first year. He's there for 3 years as head coach. They get a little bit worse as he's there. And in his final year, Peyton Manning goes down. So that one really doesn't count. But 3 years of being a head coach. 3 years of experience of what it's like to run a team. And for him, it probably did help him that he was part of such a great environment. He knew maybe the key aspects to win. He came in with a very positive outlook. And he saw what the other guys did. He was able to learn from guys. He took that information in, took that knowledge, took it to Detroit, and I think that's why he was ready to go as soon as he came in, because he had a great experience already. He was ready to go. There wasn't any kind of process of, oh, this is weird, this is different. No, I've done this, and I've done it, and we've been successful. I know what I want to do here, and I think that's why his first year was his best year as a coach. Plus, when you're a head coach, you also know what it's like to look for to get assistants and how to hire assistants and what it takes, to hire these side guys that as a coordinator, you're not hiring. As a coordinator, you're not going out and hiring the offense coordinator. The head coach has to do that, right? They have to look and make those decisions. And as a coach, if you've done it before, you know what it's like, the process to find players, to do these different things they didn't have responsibilities for. And finally, Monty Clark, who didn't have the best record, 43-61, but still 43 wins. Monty Clark, who was an offensive line coach, then was a head coach for a short period of time, but still a head coach for the 49ers. Again, another guy. He's been there. He's done that. He knows what it's like to be a head coach. And then he comes to Detroit, and he actually won the NFC North one year with Detroit. So what I'm saying here is that if you look at this historically, the best coaches for us in the Super Bowl era have been guys that had done it before, that were ready to step in and take it over and do it. And even if it wasn't their first year they had success and it took a couple years, they knew maybe more how to rebuild it. Now, again, I'm not saying that coordinators aren't the move. You can hire a coordinator. They've been successful. I just think with the Lions haven't had that culture or consistent success where it's like, okay, I'm coming in, I'm feeling good, I'm taking over. No, you're usually taking over. If you're taking over the Lions job, you're taking over a dumpster fire. And you're taking over with no experience, and there's no culture here. If you start out slow because of our history of always starting out slow, the pressure is extremely immense on you because it's not like, oh yeah, we're okay with lose 3 years in a row because guess what? We've been good before. No, you come to Detroit and you're trash 2 years, like, oh, get this dude out of here. This is the same exact thing we get every year. But if you get a head coach who's had dealt this before, sometimes maybe is better. And you're like, okay, well, he's proven he's done it. Plus, the guy comes in, he's probably a little more calm with it. Like, okay, I know I'm familiar at least how to run things. Patricia, for his first 2 years, probably trying to figure out how to do things. This dude's trying to figure out how to run practice because he hasn't done it. So it's way different. Everything's different. He's like trying to figure out where to place things on the practice field. And I think that's why maybe head coaches have success. So I'm not saying don't hire a coordinator if the Patricia thing doesn't work out. All I'm saying is that potentially looking for a head coach, a guy that's at least had some experience there, maybe not anymore, but had experience there, could be the move. Two guys that I always take a look at. We're not getting into any candidates here really, but two guys I take a look at are Urban Meyer and Jim Harbaugh. All right, both very successful college coaches. Harbaugh even successful in the NFL. The reason I look at these two guys, and of course doesn't mean you'll be able to go get Urban Meyer. He may never coach again. Jim Harbaugh, he may never leave Michigan. But I look at these two guys because of this. They're both proven as head coaches. All right, now Urban Meyer, yes, at the college level. Sometimes college level coaches don't work in the NFL. But everywhere he's been, multiple places, he's turned an organization around. BG, Bowling Green, 9-3. They destroy Toledo from 2-9. Then he goes to Utah, a 10-win season. Then he goes to Florida. They win the college championship against the Ohio State Buckeyes, who he later goes to coach for Ohio State. And then he wins the national championship there. Ohio State's all of a sudden one of the best college teams every single year, right? They were great. Now they're insane. They're just one of the best teams. Look at Jim Harbaugh. I know some Michigan fans are like, oh, I don't like Jim Harbaugh. But think about Jim Harbaugh's resume. San Diego comes in 11-2 twice. Goes to Stanford. Beats number 1 USC, who was favored to beat them by 41 points. Shows he can get an upset. Takes them to an 11-1 record and the championship game in 1 year. 49ers. Comes in first year 13-3. It was supposed to be a rebuild, but he's done it before. Comes in 13-3. Then 11-4-1. Then 12-4. Takes you to a Super Bowl. Has an 8-8 record. Goes to Michigan. at Michigan. Yes, he hasn't beat Ohio State, but he's also made Michigan relevant in college football, which they weren't with Brady Hoke. With Brady Hoke, this is the team that one time squeaked by and beat Ohio State, who wasn't good. Now he's playing one of these Ohio State teams that Meyer basically built that was already great, made it even better. That's one of the best that really no team beats that consistently, like ever. Like, it's rare to beat Ohio State in college football. So for Michigan, he's turned around. That team's been ranked number 3 before. That team is consistently a top 25 team. And with Hoke, it was like, are we going to win more than half our games? So those are kind of guys I look at. And we're not going to dive into assistants. We're probably not going to do crazy videos like that. But I just want to discuss it because I think it is necessary to discuss the future while also hoping that what the now does work. I believe in what we can do in this team, and you guys understand that. But I also think it is important maybe to be just a little bit prepared for the future, and those are just kind of my thoughts. So this isn't me making a video saying, get rid of Patricia. That's not what this is. Not at all. But it's also me saying that, hey, we also need to be prepared for the future because at the end of the day, we all have the same goal. And I think the Lions need to be prepared just like we do. Thank you, for watching, and I'm out. Are you kidding me right now? I had to put my helmet on for this one. Are you kidding? Look at this. Look at all these members. What? Yo, hey, shout out to all the members, man. Look how many All-Pro members there are. Like, literally, it's the whole screen, dog. This is crazy. The patrons, of course, the Hall of Fame members, man. Y'all got the gold color. It's kind of yellow, but it's supposed to be gold. Shout out to all the members, man. If you want to be a part of this, all you got to do is join the channel. But there are perks that come with it. Stay locked in the community tab if you are a member because that's where a lot of information comes out. I appreciate all of you. What?